Hi, I'm Dr. G, and welcome to our video today about affairs. This video will cover basically what affairs are, and also if you're experiencing that in your relationship, the first feelings, emotions, reactions that you may have, and then what to do about it if you decide to continue with the relationship, repair the relationship, or end the relationship. That's why I have made this video to help you out, and certainly I welcome you to post some suggestions or questions. I would be glad to respond to you. So let's start with that. Not sure where you're at in terms of the relationship at the receiving or giving end of this issue, if you will, because really, in my opinion, there is in reality, in most cases, I would say majority of cases, there is really no one guilty party and perpetrator and a victim, but there are actually two people who over time through their interactions with each other lead to the emergence of that affair. So therefore both are technically players in this scenario, as well as what I would suggest to look at is both are hurt and damaged from having an affair while they are in a relationship. So no matter where you are at, for instance, let's say if you are suspecting your partner having an affair, then you would be more on the side where you are suspicious, you have no clue, you yourself don't have an affair, but the partner may have an affair, and that's a little bit of a different position to be within the relationship as compared if let's say you are someone who has an affair outside of your main relationship, and you're also struggling with that, you're stressed about it, and you don't and your partner doesn't, at least, and just to a greater certainty you can be sure that they don't have it. So you're in a pickle as well, and in a certain predicament, but also that is a quite different position to have within that relationship. So no matter from which position looking at this affair you come in, what I would like to really start with is to help you understand that an affair really is a symptom of a much more underlying and deeper issue and problem, which is literally a matter of miscommunication. And it's kind of said generally, people think, well, what is, are you serious? Just miscommunication. But by that, what I mean is a profound level of miscommunication and therefore misunderstanding, to a point where a pattern of misunderstood expressions and techniques of, let's say, listening, hearing one another, reflecting, and being for the other partner have led to a gap, to a void between the individuals in the relationship. So in what we call this, really, it is a void and gap in intimacy. So the two partners over time, and that's why I mentioned that both are players in this scenario, that over time they end up developing, gradually increasing this gap of intimacy between each other, to a point that they feel more and more and more distanced to one another. And it is literally characterized, that distance and the quality of that relationship and the way they relate and engage with one another is characterized by feelings of actually loneliness while they are together. They don't feel necessarily fully heard, supported, understood, validated, appreciated, loved, and so forth. everyone would like to really describe that type of a distance with a different word. For some people, I'm not being heard or understood makes the most sense. For others, it may be more of a lack of validation and appreciation. We see that a lot in terms of people coming in typically with these types of descriptions, whether it is the wife or husband, and again both in heterosexual as well as same-sex relationships, but more or less those positions of wife and husband. Many people come in with this idea and this pattern, repeated pattern of not having been appreciated. No matter what they do, they believe, based on their experience, based on their interactions and reactions that they have received from their partner, that they have put in a lot of investment in terms of energy, psychic energy, personal, physical energy, even monetary, and other types of investment, let's say emotional, being there emotionally, and committing all their presence to the relationship, their love and caring and attention. However, they feel that there is no reciprocal appreciation and valuation that is positive and gratifying and satisfying coming from their partner. That's one pattern that may come in, as opposed to the other one, as I mentioned to you, someone who feels they're not heard or they are not understood fully. There is another one where people may say something like they're being used in the relationship, either as a, let's say, especially with females, as just a sex object, as a pleasure object, and really nothing else. And especially again with men who may utter this description of them being just a provider, kind of a workhorse, and they don't mean anything else outside of that. At least that is their perception. So these are a few characteristics that I wanted to mention that you perhaps may detect in your relationship. And if that is the case, that's a pretty good indication about that presence of that void and distance that relates to intimacy between you and your partner. So as a result, usually what happens is that people tend to kind of play down the importance of this distance in the beginning of the relationship. They minimize its negative impact. They naturally want to gravitate toward what's more positive in the relationship and kind of ignore the presence of this void, not thinking that they actually are at times contributing to its increase and its widening. So what happens over time, there is a tipping point. It may be after a few months into the relationship, it may be after a few years, and a few years could be 2 years or 20 years. You never know, based on that strength of the relationship and different events that happen in the relationship, such as, let's say, there are financial problems, issues, people move, and career, job related issues, family stress, or events happening, childbirth, children leaving the home, etc. So whatever stressors happen, they concurrently add to this distance between the individuals. And then there are some opportunities, as there are always in our lives, in terms of a person literally getting to know many possible potential other partners throughout work, or just networking with other individuals at your job, or at a coffee shop, on the street, in the marketplace, wherever it may be, through other friends, network of friends. So as a result of this combination of feeling the stress, living this void, and having this opportunity of perhaps another person offering what is missing in the relationship, such as that feeling of validation or feeling of appreciation, or feeling, that unique feeling that a person is longing and desiring for. That is really the inception of the affair. And basically, one way or another, whether it is more of the physical intimacy or emotional intimacy or sexual intimacy or even philosophical intimacy, if you will, and many types of closeness, that two people find more of a closeness with each other outside of the relationship than they have in their relationship with their main partner. And that's really the beginning of that development of that affair. Now, over time, again, because there's the main relationship has relied and developed for many months or years and relied heavily on this certain factors that are upholding this relationship, a person is not immediately willing to call off the main relationship and pursue the secondary relationship. In fact, no relationship is perfect. So even the affair relationship has its own pros and cons, especially cons as well, where people may kind of vacillate. They may not be quite certain whether or not actually what they thought they were missing in the main relationship is fully, completely gratifying and satisfactory in the new relationship, and if that is actually the whole picture. So what happens then is that there's two relationships, and at times even multiple relationships, in terms of almost like a serial, I would say, serial type of seeking this need or expectation of their need being fulfilled in yet another newer exciting relationship. People may end up with these multiple affairs at times, because again, that whole idea of the void that has existed in their main relationship has not been quite fully examined and resolved, and they are just kind of replicating it and taking it to a new relationship. Same exact pattern reestablish itself, and that leads to another third relationship or fourth relationship. They can be parallel to each other, they can be sequential to one another, and ultimately they are maintained over time, because a person, again, has not necessarily resolved the main problem, the main issue, which I mentioned earlier, really is rooted in a very profound level of miscommunication and misalignment. So again, I want to emphasize that this miscommunication is not a superficial thing about miscommunication, like somebody says, close the door, and the other person thought they said shut the door. Now, it's not about that. It is really a misalignment of two people's coming and meeting, in terms of meeting of the minds, meeting of the hearts, really being able to learn about each other, about each other's inner world, and being attuned to one another. That type of misalignment, miscommunication, utterly needs to be resolved for a person to just be happy in any relationship, to develop the tools and skills to be able to cross that gap and really even nip it in the bud and prevent it from developing. And even when it develops, being able to kind of revisit it and remove that gap in the relationship with their partner. So I'm sure you may, if you notice that this is what you're dealing with, whether again in one or the other position, as I mentioned earlier in the video, you may have all kinds of feelings in terms of despair, helplessness, hopelessness, a sense of betrayal, certainly anger, frustration, agitation, rage. All those feelings are very, very natural in the beginning of finding out that something this drastic may have happened to you. And really, this is something what we call really an existential anxiety, or even worse than that, an existential terror, where you may feel like your world has been turned upside down. Many people who come to me in terms of doing couples therapy, that is what they report, and both intellectually, cognitively, as well as emotionally, they are completely overwhelmed and devastated. And that is where you may be. And again, on the part, especially on the part of the person who didn't know that an affair is taking place. And the other one position where a person knows they're engaged in that affair, but they're feeling horrible and guilty and ashamed about their position and their actions and what they're doing. And at the same time, it's a little bit of a different type of a feeling that they have. However, there are some similarities. The notion of their expectations, their world, their wishes, their dreams coming down crashing is kind of similar. There is similarity in the way they experience almost this futility and the helplessness within the main relationship, but they experience it from completely opposite and completely different realities and perspectives. So if that is you, you're feeling these emotions, it's all normal. There's not much you can do about these emotions and feelings except for acknowledging them, maybe listing them, maybe going through them, and then decide what you want to do. More or less, if there is any indication of what I mentioned earlier to you within your relationship, that you or your partner actually may have veered away from one another early on in the relationship at some point, and where you started distancing and feeling distant from one another, and any of those indications that I mentioned, like not being validated, not being heard, not being appreciated, and not being supported, etc. If that is the case, then the next step really is for you to kind of take a deeper and honest look at what you want to do. Is this relationship worth saving, and you would want to move on with the partner, but get rid of this problem and resolve it, and actually help both of you to have a that closer, intimate, solid bond between you that you have missed out on, or it's really not worth saving at all. Those are two different trajectories, how you want to go about this. One of them certainly requires more of a rigorous type of an attention to your relationship and evolving and learning from that experience, and really evolving into a new reality, into a new experience, into a new person and personality, which is very beneficial. I've worked with many couples who have experienced that and went through the affair management, more or less affair repair, and then actually realized that it was more or less a necessary component for them to grow as human beings and really find one another. That is one option, that one trajectory, which will be also a topic of some videos that I will create. And then the other option, it would be really just kind of how to seek an amicable, at times even non-amicable, but most hopefully amicable divorce, and how to really kind of accelerate that process without doing much more damage than already has been done. So thank you for watching this video. We will create more videos about those feelings, first steps, how to go about these issues, whom to ask, what questions to ask, what to do, because if you decide to actually go through with the relationship and overcome affairs, it's a long drawn process and kind of a rigorous and intense process that people have to go through, even though it is very fruitful and rewarding in the end. But that by itself may take 6 months to a year to accomplish, and we will create some videos to help you out with that type of a process as well. Please post some questions. I would be glad to answer those questions. And if you haven't done so, subscribe to the channel to receive further notifications. Thank you very much.